Welcome once again to another edition of Good Books Radio. I'm your host this week, Dr. John Cook, and with me today is Dr. Susan Allison, who is a therapist with a doctorate in transpersonal psychology. She has maintained a private practice for 20 years and was honored as Woman of the Year in California by the Santa Cruz Women's Commission for her counseling work with adolescents. She currently works with individuals and groups to bring about healing using traditional therapies as well as hypnosis, process therapy, shamanic journey, and energy medicine. And our book for discussion today is entitled, You Don't Have to Die to Go to Heaven. If the title alone doesn't entice you, we're going to have an interesting conversation. How to find guidance and healing in spiritual realms. You don't have to die to go to heaven. Dr. Allison, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, John. It's wonderful to be here.
This is a book that is really kind of a guidebook for how to do shamanic journeying.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. Please call me Susan also.
Thank you.
It makes me feel about 90 years old when people call me Dr. Allison.
Well, since I am 90 years old, it doesn't bother me as much.
But I called you John, so please call me Susan. Yes, it's, guidebook. I'm so glad you said that because I wanted this to be more of a workbook because I personally learn best when something's experiential, whether it's a book, it's a talk I'm hearing, it's a workshop. I don't do as well with direct instruction when someone just talks at me. So I wanted this to be a sequential, step-by-step process for people, and I ask them questions. I want people to write in their journals. And, of course, there are shamanic journeys to practice throughout the book, but I wanted it to be for you and for anyone who picks up this book that you do it. It's not about me telling you what to do or telling you my experience only. It's about you having the experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, now let's make sure that our listeners understand what shamanic journeying is.
Yes.
It's really a practice that's older than most religions. And
right.
It's a way to meet your spirit allies and loved ones who have passed over, and spirit guides. And it's not a journey in the mind. It's a journey to alternate realms. That's
exactly right. It's as you said so clearly. Shamanism is probably 60,000 years old. It does predate all known religion. And probably some people believe it was the first religion. They're finding in burial sites and cave dwellings and so on, they're finding evidence that this practice was alive 60,000 years ago. And what it is that the shaman would use a rattle or a drum, which is a rhythmic, monotonous sound, and be able to close his or her eyes and go into a deep meditative state, a very relaxed state. And in that state, your brain would go into what's called theta, which is a very deep, deep brain wave. And in that sense, you're in your subconscious. You're not in your conscious mind at all. You're not thinking this. You're not imagining it. You're not picturing it. You are deeply in this state, which is an altered state. And I believe, because I do believe we have spirits, that we are energy. We're densely packed light, as quantum physicists would say, that we are spirit traveling to alternate realms of reality. We are able to meet with departed loved ones. And I've been doing this for 22 years. I could not possibly, John, imagine or think up the places I've been, because I've never seen them ever, or the people I meet, because I don't even know who they are. I have to ask their names. So this isn't something I'm thinking. It's something that is happening really out of linear time.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about going into the state a bit, too. I downloaded the shamanic drumming from your website. That was easy to do, although it disappeared. I can't explain that. But it's a very soft and gentle sound that toward the end, when you're coming back from your journey, speeds up to kind of help you come back.
That's right. So for people who are listening who are unfamiliar, basically you want to set aside at least 30 minutes, I would say even longer. You want to be in a quiet environment and turn off all your electronics. And then I suggest getting an eye mask. And some of you have a scarf. That would be fine. An eye mask that you can get. Here in California, we have Bed Bath & Beyond. They have, like, eye masks. but somewhere where you could get something, a sleep mask. And you put it on, and then you start the drumming, take some deep breaths, and you let the drum carry you. And yes, the drumming is on my website, drsusanallison.com, just DR, no period. And you can download it and listen to it, and it's about 24, 25 minutes. Then I suggest whatever experience that you have while you're in this meditative state, then you write about it on paper or in a journal afterwards. You write it all down.
Mm-hmm. Now, you tapped into a lot of mythology, culture, religions, and explain a lot of things in here that from some of your own experiences. But can we talk just a little bit about the lower world, the middle world, and the upper world?
Yes. So in shamanism, which again is probably 60,000 years old, the shaman would go into trance and would spirit travel to different realms. And so for all these, thousands of years, shamans have been what's called, I would call mapping. They've been mapping the spirit world. What they have found is that there's a lower world, which is not to be confused with the Christian view of hell, nor the Greek view of the underworld. This is a very primal, place that's raw nature. It's amazing. It feels like it's before humans. It's just so, it's just pristine. It's just perfect in terms of its beauty. And there you invite in a power animal, an animal totem, or as I call in the book, an animal helper. And that animal can help you, guide you, teach you, and it's about working on your character defects, I feel, in that world, working on your personality, becoming a higher person, more highly evolved human being, letting go of traits that don't serve you, like judgment and arrogance and so on, which is what happened for me. That's the lower world, which I have a power animal, the eagle, that's been with me since 1993 and is still with me today and teaches me all the time. Then there's the middle world, which is more like a dreamscape. The middle world is like you would imagine or see in your dreams. And when you go there, it's almost always a natural world or it's a garden. And you invite in beings who love you there, and you can have ancestors, departed loved ones that are still in that realm. You can have avatars, teachers, guides, and so on, meet you there, and they also are trying to help you. There's guidance and healing for you there. The upper world, which is where I mainly go now, ever since my husband's transition, I go to the upper world, which you have to pass through a membrane of some sort, like the sun's energy, mist. You pass through some energy field to get to the upper world, and it is, I call it a level of heaven, because there are levels, John, that you can't go to because we still have bodies. But there is a level that I can go to and that your listeners can go to that's a level of heaven. It's a level of the upper world. And there I've met my soul family, divine teachers, have looked at some of my past lives, and of course, most importantly in my life, I've met with departed loved ones who have ascended to that realm, to the upper world. And
some of your special guides or teachers or spirit family include Jesus and Mary Magdalene and Socrates, and I found that interesting. I think you're blessed with a star-studded cast there.
I feel very blessed, and everyone, it's like you will have different beings, John, that are yours, and I, after 22 years, I have a sense that some of these beings are assigned to us. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm special. It means that because there's no linear time in this realm, that Jesus, the Spirit of Jesus, is visiting probably millions of people at once. That lots of people who are in this world, on Earth, have had messages from Jesus, have they not? Have heard a voice, or even seen an image of Jesus. So Jesus, the Spirit of Jesus, is everywhere at once, and the same with the other beings that I've been blessed to meet. And you will have your own team, and I like to kind of call them call them your spirit team. And also, if people are ill who are listening, I totally believe that we have a healing team in the spirit realm.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple of things I want to touch on, and then I really want to dig deep into the levels of heaven and the various religious beliefs about where we go when we transition. But you mentioned the totem animals in this other realm, but you also say to pay attention to animals that show up in our world that we live in now.
That's right. And this is a bit in the book where I talk about divination, where it's not just animals, but we can get messages from everything around us. And basically, I mean, anyone who's listening who's even heard of quantum physics, which is just about everyone today, we know that everything's energy. Everything's energy. And physicists are saying that energy is densely packed light, that we are actually made of light, which is really beautiful, and that everything in the universe is made of this densely packed light, or energy, which means that the plants that you pass when you leave your house, the clouds that are overhead, the raccoon that's running by, the deer that you saw in the field, or whatever animal or bird, a lot of birds, if you see a hawk, and if you're lucky enough to see an eagle these days, a crow, a raven, all of these animals and elements of nature have messages for us, and it's called divination. Mm-hmm. I didn't come up with this; it's been centuries old. But all you do is you can walk by and you can say, "Do you have a message for me?" And you will hear it in your head. You're not going to see this animal or this plant or tree speak to you with a mouth, but obviously you're going to hear a message if there is one for you. You're going to hear a message from that being. I do this all the time, and I hear messages, whether it's from clouds or mainly from animals, particularly birds. I'll hear a message that's important for me to pay attention to each day.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the part that's easy for me to begin the journey work by opening your senses and your spirit to nature. I walk early in the mornings, and sometimes the moon is full, and you can see Jupiter and birds and animals pass by, and I'm trying to pay more attention to that now than I used to because of the lesson here. Let's talk about the tree of life a bit, because that comes from several different sources, and that's a part of how many people ascend from the middle world to the upper world, isn't it?
It sure is. The tree of life, I mean, people who are listening who perhaps are Jewish know that the tree of life is very prominent in the Jewish Kabbalah. And the tree of life is also in the Garden of Eden in Genesis, and in lots of other Eastern religions. You see this tree. But remember, earlier I said that shamanism predates all major religion, and shamans have been talking about a great tree for centuries. And even in Siberia, a shaman will set up a huge branch inside the dwelling where they're doing the work to convince the tribe that he or she is going to climb this great tree. So sets up a tree or a pole or a ladder inside the dwelling to just really give confidence to the tribal members. And this is something that I, for instance, have in my middle world. I have a beautiful place that has a giant tree. Someone just came to one of my book signings, and I did a journey for 75 people at this book signing. And she's told me that she went to a place during the journey where there was a tree like in Swiss Family Robinson. She said it was absolutely huge and had platforms, if you remember that, the story of Swiss Family Robinson. And so a great tree is something you have because you can climb up to the very top. And in my case, a bird comes and I get on, and everything is magical in these worlds, so you can actually ride on a bird. I get on a bird and it flies me to the upper world or a level of heaven. So the great tree, it has been a conduit, it's been a bridge, it's been a way that spans between heaven and earth. And also, if it has a hollow, you can go down into the hollow and you go into the lower world of animal helpers.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned that birds carry you off, and sometimes your eagle or your swan appears, but you've also shape-shifted. And then there's the golden ladder, Jacob's ladder, that you weren't that familiar with, and had an experience and went back and read the story.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool, isn't it, when you have an experience and then you do research, which is what I've done for 22 years, is be able to do that. So first, yes, you can shape-shift, which means you become the bird. And really, indigenous peoples have been doing this for centuries. All you have to do is see the cave paintings in France or other places to know that animals were very, very, very important because you wanted to attain the attributes of that animal. You wanted the keen vision of the eagle. You wanted the swiftness of the jaguar, etc. So animals are very important because you want to embody their qualities, and it's been very, very fun to shapeshift, to become that animal, and to see with new eyes, and run with be able to run the way a cheetah does, or a jaguar, or a lion, and then come back and feel you're empowered. You feel this strength and this spiritual power of the animal. So then Jacob's ladder is a story in the Bible, and Jacob is visited by angels that climb actually down the ladder from heaven. And in shamanic work, we climb up the ladder. So the ladder is used like the tree to allow you to be able to climb up. And often I've climbed a tree and a ladder drops. And you set an intention in journey. So you would set the intention, I want to climb my great tree, have a ladder drop, and I want to experience a level of heaven today. And hopefully I'm going to invite in a being that loves me to guide me in this issue in my life. So the ladder is very similar to the tree.
Mm-hmm. I do want to talk about heaven a little bit.
Sure.
You know, the title of your book is intriguing, and it reminded me of a quotation from Jesus, and I found it in Luke 17:20-21. He says, "The kingdom of God is within," or "the kingdom of heaven is within," depending on your translation. So, you know, that's a pretty important point, and it speaks to what you're bringing about here, that heaven is not a place necessarily that we have to go to when we die.
No, I mean, it's so interesting you brought this up. I was just talking to someone the other day about this, that our heaven and hell can be within us, and that heaven is, to me, it's in lots of faiths believe this. I know in the Catholic faith they do, that really hell is our separation from God, is our separation from love, our separation from one another. That's when we feel like we're in hell. And heaven is the opposite. Heaven is when we feel close to our highest part of ourselves. We feel close to whatever we believe, whether it's God, the creative force in the universe, it's, whatever it is you believe. It's energy, it's love, it's light. And that's heaven. Heaven is within us. And I have found, because you see, John, I was estranged from my Christian church for decades because of some things that happened in that church that I felt were hypocritical, that weren't really very kind. I had problems never with Jesus, but problems with what people did with Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I think people understand when I say that. And so I wasn't really Christian when I started this shamanic work, but it's healed that rift. It's healed my relationship to Jesus. And I never really believed, John, that there really was a, quote, place called heaven. In Revelation, they describe a golden city of crystal with light bouncing off. And I was raised in a Christian church, and I knew that quote, but I never believed it. Well, when I did shamanic work and I traveled to the upper world, one time I saw it. I saw this crystal city of gold above me and found that I can't go there. I can sort of, in my journey, fly up and look at it on either side. I cannot go into it. I cannot go above it. And so I actually believe what the Mormons talk about, which is that there are levels in heaven. And in the Bible it says, "In my Father's house are many mansions," that there are levels there that go on, and who knows, they may be infinite levels in heaven where you can keep rising up, I think, traveling towards the light, traveling closer and closer to God's energy, perhaps. But I never really believed it until I did shamanic work, and I did travel there and see that it actually is a place.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's some touching passages in here about your dealing with the transition of your spouse who has been in contact with you in these realms. And that brings me to some of the great stuff you've written about views of afterlife. You know, you talk about the Greeks and Romans, and that they believed in an underworld. The Egyptians believed that they might experience rebirth if they were respectful of the gods, and that's why they were mummified. The Hindu book speaks of the soul discarding the old body and taking on a new one. But there seems to be a sense of commonality about this, and that there is some afterlife somehow, regardless of how we get there.
That's right. That's right. I like doing research, and I really enjoyed seeing how similar the various religions are in their view of an afterlife, and there is a lot of commonality. And I also really respect the Baha'i faith, which says that all faiths really are saying the same thing spiritually. The social teachings all differ, but if you look at the spiritual teachings, they are very, very similar and do talk about an afterlife in different ways. But there is some place the spirit goes, and that we have a spirit. Now, if you have listeners who aren't religious or spiritual, you can think of quantum physics, and you can think of that everything is energy. And really, in the medical field, they're finding that consciousness survives death. That people who flatline, who quote die, and come back, their consciousness has still existed. They still were having experiences when the brain registered that they were dead. They were still experiencing incredible things, like Eben Alexander's book, Proof of Heaven. He's a neurosurgeon. He's very scientific, but he flatlined, and he was not, quote, here for a week, and went off and said, yes, I did go to heaven. I went to this place. He came back completely changed, and realized that we aren't just these bodies. We aren't just skin and bones and blood and cells. We have an energy that continues, and energy never dies. It continues infinitely, and that may help some listeners who don't have a religious or spiritual practice.
And even Einstein said that matter can neither be created nor destroyed. And
that's so right.
On it goes. We are breathing the same air that Socrates breathed on this planet now.
That's right. I love that you brought up Einstein. And we're finally paying attention to those messages, because you know what we've been steeped in, John, is Newtonian materialism for centuries. The idea that everything is matter. I mean, everything has to be touched and is physical, and we live in a material world, and we've really lived with that we don't believe in anything unless we can see it and touch it. And we're finally listening to quantum physicists who've been around since the 1930s, finally listening that no, everything is energy, and it's also energy between us as human beings. What is love? You know, what are these feelings that we really feel this intense energy? Really, it's the only word I can think of between us and other people.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I have friends that talk about, I like her, she has good energy, and that's something that you sense. It's not something, you know, I was thinking about scientific research class I had where the professor said, if it's real, you can measure it. And that flies in the face of the experiences that you've been having for over 2 decades now. Exactly.
And it's the Newtonian materialism, and really look around at what materialism has done for us. It's in fact, we have a nation of people that, you know, they're getting new BMWs and buying a bigger house and so forth, and has that made us happier? Has it made us, maybe initially, it's like children at Christmas, unwrapping one more present, but really has it given us deep, deep, deep joy and satisfaction and a feeling of fulfillment and a feeling that we have a purpose and we are serving one another and the planet? I don't think so. And so I do see us moving away from materialism and realizing that everything is energy, and it's the way we think, feel, act, and treat one another and treat planet Earth.
Mm-hmm. So we only have about 3 minutes left, but I want to address the question, where is heaven? You know, you mentioned, what if we live our soul's purpose, staying present within ourselves and with others, and we do this so we raise our consciousness and our vibrations, evolving each moment into the highest humans we can be.
That's right. That's right. We can bring it here, John, which is my last chapter. It's called Bringing Heaven Home. And it's after you have all these journeys, you have these experiences, and you've written them down, you have wisdom from all of these incredible, incredible beings that love you. You bring those messages into your real life. The purpose is not to sort of journey and stay out there. In fact, when I've gone, particularly after my husband's transition, I didn't really totally want to be here. And I said, I want to be up here. And the message over and over was, it's not your time. Please go back and finish your work. Do what it is you're needed to do here on Earth. So what I want listeners to do is to read my book, take all the messages, and use them now in their lives. So whatever you've been told, whatever it is that the messages you've gotten, whether, let's say you hate your job, and you've been hating it for years, and you're miserably unhappy, but it pays the mortgage. It's really important to look at what would give you joy, and what would really sustain you and others, and you would be completing your purpose here, whatever that is. And so I want people to take whatever messages they're getting and make a life plan in the last chapter. Look at the daily formula for happiness and come up with a formula that makes you happy every single day. If you look at every religious leader, every single prophet that came, they said, be happy, be full of joy, really live your life in joy. And otherwise, it feels a bit, it's sort of tragic to me that if we're living our lives and we're not really living it with love and living with joy.
We've been talking with Dr. Susan Allison about a fascinating book entitled You Don't Have to Die to Go to Heaven. I remind our listeners that if you don't catch our program broadcast 4 times a week on 88 FM, public radio for the Rio Grande Valley, you can also find us on YouTube at Good Books Radio, Strong and Cook. Most of our shows get there within a week of when they're broadcast. And, of course, 88 FM streams live on the Internet. I'm your host, Dr. John Cook. Thanks for listening.